My name is Claire Everts, and I'm going to cover some of the history of France. And this is important because without understanding the history of a country, you can't really understand how they do business. The 1930s yield the French Industrial Revolution. This boosts the nationalization of all of France's markets. This was in conjunction with the depression brought on by the start of World War II. There was also plenty of rioting throughout France and even talk of civil war. After World War II, France recognized how important economic integration was between them and the rest of Europe. The forming of the European Coal and Steel Community were some of the first steps towards today's European Union. Though France is a capitalist country, it has made many socialist adjustments in the past, such as heavy government control of the economy. Its mixed economy has not set it back at all, though. Today, France has the third largest economy in Europe and the sixth largest economy in the world based on nominal figures. France is viewed as one of the world's most modern countries, and they consider themselves to be an economic leader amongst the other European nations. Today, France's largest industries are energy, manufacturing, transportation, agriculture, and tourism. France's leading electricity company, Électricité de France, the EDF, is the largest utility company in the world. The electricity production in France is 78% based on nuclear energy. France is the fourth largest automobile manufacturer in the world and is home to Renault and Peugeot. The transportation in France is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The transportation industry in France has a comparative advantage against all the other countries in the European Union. With France's large railway system and many airports, it is a really good market to venture into. There's very minimal risk.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm going to talk about the European Union. So the European Union is a political and economic union between 28 countries, and their main goal is to promote peace within the 28 countries and to offer freedom, security, and justice. Other goals of the European Union is to establish a monetary and economic union that uses the euro, promote scientific and technological processes, and combat social exclusion and discrimination. There are many values that are an essential part of the way that Europeans live, and these values are human dignity, freedom, democracy, equity, rule of law, and human rights. The European Union created a lot of opportunities and has delivered many good things for the 28 countries involved. They provided peace, stability, while also creating a better living standard. France, being a major player in the European Union since 1958, there are 74 members of the European Parliament. Pierre Moscovici is the nominated commissioner to the European Commission. He is responsible for taxation, financial affairs, economic affairs, and customs. France has 24 representatives, and the representatives are who make changes to social and work situations. France's financial contributions are shared fairly. The budget is a very important source of support for the farmers because 40% of the budget goes to rural development and agriculture. France has an abundance amount of imports and exports. Their export partners include the United States, Germany, Italy, Spain, Belgium, and the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands. France exports many valuable supplies, including steel, machinery, pharmaceutical products, consumer products, petroleum, chemicals, iron, and transportation equipment. Their importers include Italy, Belgium, the United Kingdom, China, and Germany. And France is the second largest importer in Europe and has a total value of imports of 563 billion imports. Most of these imports come from Germany at 19%. France has a long-term interest rate at 0.77%, which is lower than the long-term average of 3.03%. France has a population of 65.8 million people and has a PBP of 2.1 trillion, ranking them 9th in the world.
Hi there, my name is JP Landry, so I'm part of the French, the team from France. On this topic, we're going to look at the microeconomic aspects of France. France basically is the 7th biggest market in the world. Basically, they are divided in 3 sectors, and the tertiary sector is the biggest sector in France at 76%-ish. Basically, everything related to services and final goods will be on the French market. What I'm going to explain to you will be 2 things. I'm going to explain the sectors overview, which is based on the market sectors, to see and identify which sector will be the most favorable for business from the United States to invest in France. And the second aspect, I'm going to look at the microeconomic factors, which will be in unemployment. And we're also going to look at the forecast of France to see if that investment sounds wise in the future 5 years. So let's start with the financial outlook. One thing that is really important to know is that compared to the S&P 500, which is the financial index in the United States, France is actually using the Euronext Paris, which is encompassing everything related to the European Union. But what I'm going to talk about will be the CAC 40, which is basically the 40 biggest companies in terms of market capitalization for France. On that 40, we are going to look at 3 sectors that we identified as being great sectors for investments, and one that we analyzed as something that shouldn't be taken into our business plans if we would go into the oil and gas sector, for example. So the first sector that I'm going to talk about would be consumer discretion. Consumer discretionary will be everything that is related to the goods that are normally luxurious. As implied in the CAC 40, there is also the customer staple that is in there, which would be essential goods that we would like to have. And so if you are a company that is selling beer bottles or that is selling anything that is household products, it would be a great investment, because as we've analyzed over the past 5 years, that sector alone went up 36%, which is basically 14 points above the average global CAC 40 index. And so France is really thriving with this sector. Also, what would be important to know is that out of those sectors, the main exportation and importers would be Germany. France is working on a trade deficit on those ones, but it doesn't mean anything because they're still keeping strong monetary policies and aggressive ones by keeping a low interest rate. And so with those exports and imports, everything is balancing out. And so we concluded that the customer sector is pretty good. The second sector that we are going to look at will be the industry sector. As we all know here, there is like a fierce competition with one of their main company, which is Airbus. Airbus actually is implemented in the United States as well as all over Europe. They are the direct competitor to Boeing and Bombardier, which is a Canadian company. So basically, manufacturers in France, like Peugeot, which is a car manufacturer, and Airbus, are actually leading the whole market cap on that company, on that sector. Airbus is one of the biggest one that you could see in terms of airplanes if we don't take into account the defense sector, like Lockheed Martin. And so when you look at the industry sector right now, they had a huge correction that happened in 2014 and 2015, but it was due to political instabilities. Right now, the market global index, as in June 2018, is going down, and there is a huge correction happening, mainly due to 2 facts, which is China, a trade war with the United States, and the overall political uncertainties. We can see a correction happen this year also, which is what was forecast mostly by Bloomberg analysts. But overall, if we would like to do an implementation on the industry, it would be great. Something to know, though, is that because France is working with the European Union, there is a free trade zone. And so for the United States to develop their business, France would be a really great door or a great entry if they would like to do their business elsewhere in the European Union. And so for industries, companies, which are normally relying on specialized worker, if they go over there, that would be great. In later part of that presentation, we're going to talk about the low unemployment, which might actually work against what we're looking for right now. But let's talk about the third sector, which is oil and gas. Oil and gas right now is extremely volatile for two main reasons. Oil is mainly controlled by three main players, which is the United States, Russia, and the OPEC. France doesn't have that much of a leeway as a price taker for oil, which is why they only have one big company, which is Total. Total is a fully integrated company, which basically means that they drill the oil, they refine it, and then they sell it. Total is a pretty good company, but the sector overall in France is lagging behind if you compare it to the US market. And so if you're trying to develop something in there, it would be better to have a joint venture or a partnership instead of just fully getting into this country. So that would be it for the financial sector analysis. The two main points to take would be to have a business that would be favorable for industry sectors and consumer discretionary or staple. And those two would be great for two main reasons. The low trade barriers, for the non-existent actually trade barriers in the European Union, and the overall tertiary commerce or markets in France being the main player in the market. And now we're going to look at the economical factors. So for the unemployment index, for the microeconomic analysis that we have for France, we evaluated two main components. The first one would be unemployment index. Right now, the unemployment index in France is sitting at 8.9%, which is actually a decrease over the last 5 years. It's important to know that in their calculation, they're not calculating it as the United States would do. They do take into account the frictional employees, and they also do take account the people that are that drop their research or their search for employment. So that number is higher, but it's actually pretty low if you compare it to over historical of 10 years. This is a pretty low one, and right now the salaries keep increasing, but unfortunately, as we can see, the inflation is actually getting higher than their propension to buy products because of their salary increases less. We can expect then to have a increase in the interest rate overall in France. Right now, the United States is around 3% for the Feds or the T-bill, the Treasury bills. France right now is sitting above 1%, which means that right now they are pretty aggressive in their interest rate. Which brings me to the second point that I would like to talk about for France is the capital. Capital is an extremely good resource in France right now because of the extremely low interest rate. So if you are an investor that would like to have something, as we talked about, into industries or in customer staple or discretionary, that would be a really good advantage if you would go and land in France. Although that being said, for the starting of a company that would be great, but France is also highly taxed because they have a bigger social net that you could see in the United States. And so it's important to take into account that for an investor, dividends or anything related to that sort will be decreased on the will decrease in the net income to the marginal tax rate, which is around 38% right now for small companies and 33% marginal tax rate for bigger companies, and we're talking about higher than $750 million per year. And so just to finalize the microeconomic, we're going to talk about the forecast that we think about France. So France right now is a pretty great country to invest in right now. It's not because there is a lot of market fluctuation on the global market that it would be unwise to invest in it. The capital is extremely cheap, and so for foreign investors, that would be a really great asset if they would like to penetrate the European market. Also, the free trade that the European market is offering is extremely advantageous if you'd like to do this. And we would like to just have a strong buy on on France as a country for foreign investments. Everything seems to be great, although there might be a correction on the interest rate in 5 years. That's only a forecast and analysis, so if we stick to the real fundamentals right now without making assumptions, France would be great. Thank you.